Welcome, executives. All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're dissecting an ancient fable, but we're using it to expose the very modern cognitive blind spots caused by unchecked corporate greed. We're going to look at a classic story from the court of Maryada Ramanna. But we aren't just reading a fairy tale today. We're actually using this story as a sharp, strategic lens to examine professional integrity, the psychology of decision-making, and what happens when the market finally holds a mirror up to our businesses.
Here is our roadmap for today's briefing. We'll start with a debt in the dream, move into the psychology of greed, examine the principles of integrity and fair trade, look into the mirror of market reality, and finally, distill actionable lessons for your boardroom. Section 1. A debt in the dream. The illusion of value. So let's start by laying out the facts of our source material, which is a fascinating case brought before the legendary Judge Maryada Ramanna. The whole plot kicks off when a poor farmer just innocently mentions a dream he had. In this completely fabricated nocturnal illusion, he dreamt that he borrowed 100 silver coins from a notorious local moneylender. It was literally just a dream. But the greedy moneylender happens to overhear this farmer recounting the dream. And this is exactly where the story pivots from a simple little anecdote into a pretty profound study of greed. Now, look at how the moneylender reacts. He doesn't laugh it off. No way. He immediately files a formal case in court. He demands repayment of the 100 coins plus interest, arguing that a debt is a debt regardless of the realm in which it was actually incurred. It sounds totally laughable, right? I mean, the audacity of demanding real, tangible returns on an investment of absolutely zero value. But before we judge this ancient moneylender too harshly, let's bring this into the modern era. As leaders, you really have to ask yourselves how often phantom metrics or illusionary expectations drive your own strategic decisions. Think about it. How often do modern corporations demand massive returns based on what are essentially dream debts? We see this all the time in hyperinflated startup valuations based on vaporware. We see it when executives demand exponential growth in completely saturated markets. These are our modern dream debts, demanding real-world, hard currency returns based on scenarios that only exist in the imaginations of an overly greedy C-suite. Section 2. The psychology of greed, delusion in decision-making. Let's dig into the psychology behind this, because it builds into an incredibly dangerous cognitive trap for decision-makers. The psychological impact of greed on decision-making is just profound. In our source story, greed literally blinded the moneylender to reality. He wasn't just trying to pull a fast one. His avarice bypassed his basic logic to the point where he genuinely felt entitled to tangible money for a phantom event. And in the boardroom, unchecked greed creates that exact same detachment from reality. When the focus shifts entirely to extraction rather than the fair exchange of value, illusionary scenarios like wildly unrealistic sales projections or toxic financial derivatives start being treated as concrete assets on the balance sheet. And this brilliantly illustrates the direct mapping between our fable and your boardroom. The concept of a dream debt is the exact equivalent of the unrealistic business expectations we see today. Just think of the modern examples of corporate greed we've seen in recent decades. Companies hiding massive debts off ledger to artificially inflate stock prices, or promising revolutionary tech that simply doesn't exist. They were trying to cash in on a dream. And exactly like the moneylender, their greed completely compromised their professional integrity and their grip on reality. Section 3. Integrity and fair trade, Ramanna's ruin. So the crucial point here is how the judge, Maryada Ramanna, restores professional integrity and market reality to this totally absurd transaction. Because how do you actually rule on a delusion? Framed through Ramanna's judgment, we are reminded of the absolute bedrock of professional integrity, which is fair trade. Fair trade fundamentally requires exchanging real value for real value. Ramanna realizes that to deliver justice, he has to match the nature of the debt with the nature of the repayment. You simply cannot demand real-world returns on an illusionary investment. The market must balance. To execute this lesson, Ramanna brings 100 real, heavy, tangible silver coins into the courtroom and places them right on a table. He establishes what actual corporate value looks like. But, and this is crucial, he doesn't hand them over to the moneylender. He holds the real value back, preparing to teach an absolute masterclass in market correction. Section 4. The mirror of market reality, reflecting true value. This brings us to the climax of the source material. Ramanna introduces a mirror. He places a large mirror right next to those 100 real silver coins. He then turns to the greedy moneylender and delivers the verdict. He says, Since the farmer borrowed the money in an illusionary dream, it is only fair that he repays you with illusionary money. He tells the lender he may collect the reflection of the coins in the mirror as his full repayment. The outcome? The greedy lender is utterly humiliated and sent packing. This is the ultimate metaphor for market reality. You can artificially inflate your projections, you can demand returns on vaporware, but eventually the market holds up a mirror. And if your initial investment of effort, product, or service was an illusion, your profits will be nothing more than a reflection, untouchable, and ultimately worthless. The market always restores reality.
Section 5. Lessons for the boardroom. Grounding your strategy. So, what should you, as executives, actually take away from this explainer to ensure professional integrity in your own operations? How do we avoid the moneylender's fate? Well, you must take these 3 steps. First, aggressively audit your strategy for dream depths. Where is greed clouding your logic? Where are your projections based on hope rather than hard data? Second, anchor your demands in real, tangible value. Ensure that every single transaction your company engages in represents true fair trade. And third, recognize the psychological trap. Greedy decision-making inevitably detaches you from reality and leads directly to market humiliation. The modern corporate landscape is literally littered with the bankruptcies of companies that tried to cash in mirror reflections. I want to leave you with this final, critical thought to ponder during your next strategy session. Consider your ROI today, leaders. Look closely at your balance sheets, your growth models, and your corporate culture. Are you building your empires by exchanging real value for real silver coins? Or, blinded by unchecked expectations, are you simply chasing the untouchable reflections of a dream? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope it brings sharp clarity to your next big decision.
Some stories entertain us, but some stories change the way we think. Watch more powerful stories that teach business and life lessons, only on Creative Subbu YouTube channel.